The skies above, a pilot's encounter. What would you do if everything you thought you knew about our skies suddenly changed forever? If in a single moment your understanding of reality was shattered by something that shouldn't exist? Today, we bring you the extraordinary testimony of Captain Sarah Chen, a decorated F-16 pilot with 12 years of military service and over 2,000 flight hours under her belt. Captain Chen has flown combat missions across 3 theaters of operation and knows the difference between conventional aircraft and weather phenomena better than almost anyone alive. But on January 15, 2024, during what should have been a routine training exercise over Arizona's Barry M. Goldwater Range, Captain Chen encountered something that defied every law of physics she understood: a cylindrical metallic object with no wings, no visible propulsion system that could move instantaneously across impossible distances. An object that seemed to communicate directly into her mind with a chilling message: we are preparing. In the testimony you're about to hear, Captain Chen describes not just her encounter but the government debrief that followed, men in suits who confiscated her flight data and warned her that speaking out would be considered treason. She reveals ongoing dreams and visions that have only intensified in the months since her encounter, showing massive ships positioned around the globe. Despite the risk to her career and personal safety, Captain Chen has chosen to break her silence. She believes the public deserves to know what's happening in our skies and what might be coming. This is her story, in her own words. Prepare yourself for testimony that will challenge everything you think you know about what's possible above us. Captain Sarah Wilkers' encounter begins now.
My name is Captain Sarah Wilkers. I'm a 34-year-old F-16 pilot with the 162nd Wing out of Tucson. 12 years of service, over 2,000 flight hours. I've flown combat missions in 3 theaters. I know the difference between a MiG-29 and a weather balloon at 20 miles out in zero visibility. What happened on January 15th, 2024, during a routine training exercise over the Barry M. Goldwater Range? It changed everything I thought I knew about what's possible in our skies. We were running intercept drills around 1400 hours. Perfect Arizona day, clear skies, unlimited visibility. I was led on a 4-ship formation when Tucson approach vectored us toward an unknown contact.
Viper lead, unknown aircraft, bearing 285, Angels 20, no transponder, not responding to radio calls.
Standard procedure. We get these all the time, usually drug runners or lost civilian aircraft. I took the lead with my wingman, Lieutenant Morrison, trailing at 2 miles. When I acquired visual at about 8 miles out, I knew immediately this wasn't standard anything. The object was cylindrical, maybe 40 feet long, metallic silver, no wings, no visible propulsion system. It was just hanging there, motionless, like it was suspended by invisible wires. I called it in. Tucson approach, Viper lead has visual on unknown aircraft, requesting guidance. The response still gives me chills.
Viper lead, we show no traffic in your vicinity.
But there it was, right in front of me. Morrison confirmed visual. Our HUDs were tracking it. Our weapons systems were locked onto it. Yet according to ground control, we were chasing ghosts. That's when it moved. No acceleration phase, no engine noise. 1 second it was stationary, the next it was 500 yards to my left, then below me, then, God help me, it was directly in front of my canopy, maybe 15 feet away. I could see details. The surface had this strange quality, like brushed aluminum, but alive somehow. There were no seams, no rivets, no markings. It was perfectly smooth except for these darker patches that seemed to pulse with their own light. And then, I felt it. In my head. Not words exactly, but communication. Like someone reaching directly into my thoughts. It wasn't hostile, but it was so alien, so completely other, that every instinct told me to run. The message, if you can call it that, was simple. We are preparing. Preparing for what? I tried to think the question back, and for just a moment I saw flashes. Images, massive ships in Earth's upper atmosphere, coordinated movements, thousands of objects like this one, positioned around the globe. The encounter lasted maybe 3 minutes. Then the object simply vanished. Not flew away. Vanished, like it had never been there. When we landed, there was a debrief unlike anything I had experienced. Men in suits who wouldn't identify their agency. They had our flight data, our radio transmissions, our HUD footage, everything. They told me it was classified under national security protocols. They told me that discussing it with anyone, even my family, would be considered an act of treason. They told me there would be consequences. But people deserve to know. The Pentagon admits they have 21 cases they can't explain. My encounter was one of 757 new reports they received last year. We're not alone, and whatever's happening, it's accelerating. 3 months after my encounter, I started having dreams. The same message: we are preparing, and each time the images are clearer. They're coming, not invading, arriving. There's a difference. I know how this sounds. I know what people will think. But I took an oath to defend this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. How do you defend against something that exists in dimensions we can't comprehend, that moves through space-time like we move through water? The government knows more than they're telling us. They have materials. They have Biologics 21. Luis Elizondo, former Pentagon intelligence officer, has confirmed this 21. We're being prepared for something, but nobody's telling us what. I'm speaking out because silence isn't protecting anyone anymore. Whatever's coming, whatever they're preparing for, we have a right to know. Voice fading. The dreams are getting stronger, more frequent, and in the latest one, I wasn't alone in the cockpit. There was someone else there, someone who looked like me, but wasn't.
They smiled and said, "Soon, Sarah, very soon."
I wake up every morning wondering if today's the day we find out what they're preparing for.
The testimony has been shared. Now it's time to examine it, challenge it, and see where it leads us.
Okay, so let's unpack this incredible account. We're diving deep today into a single, really powerful source. The witness testimony of Captain Sarah Chen. And this isn't just, a standard report. It's a first-hand account from someone incredibly credible, an F-16 pilot.
Right.
Serious flight hours, combat experience.
Yeah.
Detailing a UAP encounter that, well, in her words, changed everything she thought she knew about what's possible.
Yeah.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to really go through this detailed testimony, pull out the key details, understand exactly what she says she saw, what she claims she experienced, and what she thinks it all means. And we're sticking strictly to her words in this document.
And what's fascinating here, I think, and really sets this apart right from the start, is the witness herself, her caliber.
Absolutely.
When you have someone with Captain Chen's background, talking about something that's often dismissed, well, it just adds significant weight, doesn't it?
It really does.
This isn't some blurry photo from way off. It's a trained military observer detailing something extraordinary from inside a highly controlled environment. That credibility, it's the foundation she builds for everything else she says.
Totally agree. And she lays that foundation out very carefully right at the beginning. She tells us exactly who she is. Captain Sarah Chen, 34 years old, F-16 pilot, 162nd Wing out of Tucson, Arizona. She's got 12 years of service, racked up over 2,000 flight hours in an F-16. That's not trivial.
Not at all. And combat missions to 3 different theaters.
Right.
And that experience, it's not just impressive, on paper. It's fundamental to how we evaluate her testimony. 2,000 hours in a fighter. That means she spent a huge amount of time looking at the sky using complex sensors, learning to tell the difference between, well, everything. Airliners, private planes, drones, other military craft, weather balloons, weird atmospheric stuff.
Right. Everything is up there.
Exactly. And the combat missions add another layer entirely, operating under extreme stress where identifying things correctly instantly is literally life or death. She's trained, extensively in situational awareness, target discrimination. It's her job.
And she basically says that herself, doesn't she? With that really striking quote, almost heading off skepticism before it starts.
Yeah, that's a powerful line.
She says, and this is directly from her testimony, "I know the difference between a MiG-29 and a weather balloon at 20 miles out in zero visibility."
Wow. Yeah,
It sums it up, doesn't it? Her confidence and her skills, even in tough conditions. She's saying, point blank, whatever this was, it wasn't something normal. She just misidentified.
Exactly. Her training isn't just about flying the plane. It's about being part of the plane's sensor system herself, cross-referencing what she sees with radar, electronics, expected behavior. So when a pilot like that says, unequivocally, this was unlike anything standard I've ever seen or trained for, it dramatically cuts down the odds that it's just, I don't know, a weird weather effect or a known aircraft acting strangely.
Right.
It doesn't tell us what it was, of course, but it strongly backs up her claim that it was genuinely anomalous to her. And that's what stands out right away. She establishes her credentials immediately to frame just how extraordinary the rest of her story is.
Okay, so we've got this highly credible witness establishing her expertise. And she takes us right into the incident, sets the scene. January 15th, 2024. Supposed to be a routine training exercise over the Goldwater Range that's restricted military airspace.
Right, important detail.
And the conditions. She describes them as basically perfect for seeing things. Perfect Arizona day clear skies, unlimited visibility. So it was around 2 p.m., 1400 hours.
And that context, the environment, it's crucial because it rules out a lot of the usual mundane explanations right off the bat.
Yeah, like weather.
Exactly. Clear skies mean no weird cloud formations mistaken for objects, no obscured view. Unlimited visibility means she could see for miles and miles. Daylight means she could see detail, shape, color, features, unlike sightings that are just lights at night.
Good point.
So according to her, this wasn't something, fleeting or blurry, seen in bad weather or the dark. It was observed under absolutely optimal visual conditions.
Okay. So she says it starts pretty normally. They're doing intercept drills, a 4-ship formation.
Standard training stuff.
When Tucson approach, that's the local air traffic control, vectors them towards an unknown contact.
Right.
And the initial info from ATC, she says, is specific but also standard procedure for this kind of thing. Bearing 285, Angels 20, that's 20,000 feet altitude. No transponder, not responding to radio calls.
Yeah, and that's standard operating procedure, SOP, for any unidentified blip on the radar in controlled airspace. ATC's main job is safety, right? Keep planes apart. So an object on radar that isn't squawking a transponder code, that's the signal identifying the plane, its altitude, speed, and isn't answering radio calls. That's an immediate flag. Could be anything from a lost Cessna to a drone where it shouldn't be, or something else.
Or concerning, potentially.
Potentially. No transponder means it's off the grid, basically, not part of the standard ID system. Not responding means it can't or won't talk via normal aviation radio. So right away, it signals something operating outside the usual rules for that airspace.
Raises questions from the start.
Absolutely. Is it deliberately non-compliant? Is it technically unable to comply? Or is it something entirely different?
She actually mentions they get these kinds of reports all the time, usually drug runners or lost civilian aircraft.
Yeah.
So the initial call in itself isn't instantly alarming for her.
Right. It's part of the job sometimes.
It's what happens next that makes this completely different. She and her wingman, Lieutenant Morrison, they're sent towards this contact, and they get eyes on it visually when they're about 8 miles out.
Okay, so visual acquisition, that's the next logical step. See what the radar's painting.
But her immediate reaction, as soon as she sees it, this goes back to her credibility, doesn't it? She says, I knew immediately this wasn't standard anything.
That's telling, isn't it? Not hesitant, just boom, instant recognition based on all that experience that this thing didn't fit any known category she knew.
And she describes what she saw right then at 8 miles. Cylindrical, maybe 40 feet long, metallic silver, no wings, no visible propulsion system.
Okay, stop right there. That description, it's just deeply inconsistent with anything we know that flies, especially maintaining altitude like that.
Oh, so?
Well, a cylinder with no wings, no aerodynamic lift in the conventional sense, no visible propulsion, no jets, no props, no rockets, not even like exhaust or heat shimmer. How does it stay up? How does it move?
Good point.
And its behavior then was just as weird, just hanging there, motionless, like it was suspended by invisible wires.
Motionless at 20,000 feet.
Yeah, that's key. Not drifting like a balloon, not hovering like a chopper or a drone, which need constant power and have visible rotors or engines making noise. Just hanging there, as if gravity and wind weren't affecting it.
So, right.
It suggests either a propulsion and lift system completely unknown to us, or some kind of interaction with gravity or inertia that we just can't replicate.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally different from any known aircraft or atmospheric vehicle.
So she sees this clearly anomalous thing, and she does her job, reports back. Tucson approach. Viper Lead has visual on unknown aircraft, requesting guidance.
Standard procedure.
And this is where it goes from, like, really strange to deeply unsettling. Because ground control comes back with, Viper Lead, we show no traffic in your vicinity.
There it is. The classic disconnect. Pilot sees it, sensors might see it, but ground radar doesn't. This comes up so often in credible military UAP reports.
Right. The guys on the ground looking at their screens see empty sky where the pilots are looking right at a physical object. And Captain Chen, she really hammers this point home in her testimony.
Yeah.
She says emphatically, but there it was, right in front of me. And it wasn't just her.
Crucial point.
She immediately adds, Morrison confirmed visual. Her wingman saw the exact same thing.
Okay, so 2 trained observers, not just one person's eyes playing tricks.
And more than that, their planes backed them up. Our HUD's heads-up displays were tracking it. Our weapon systems were locked onto it.
Wow. Okay, that's huge.
So multiple confirmations from the pilots and technological confirmation from their own aircraft systems. Yet, according to ground control, we were chasing ghosts.
The significance of that just can't be overstated. You've got 2 pilots visually confirming. You've got the F-16's own systems, the HUD overlaying targeting info, the weapon systems designed to lock onto physical targets, all confirming its presence from their perspective.
Right there with them.
Exactly. The fact that ground radar didn't see it while their onboard sensors did, that strongly points to either, well, limitations in the ground radar or maybe some property of the object itself.
Like stealth.
Could be stealth on certain frequencies, maybe? Or maybe it interacts with electromagnetic energy in a way we don't understand, making it visible to some sensors but not others. Like the F-16's presumably more advanced radar or maybe electro-optical systems.
Interesting.
Whatever the reason, the testimony highlights this major disconnect between different ways of sensing things. It's a significant anomaly in either the tech or the object's physics. Really fascinating.
Yeah, it creates this really weird situation, right? You're looking at something solid, your instruments agree it's solid, but the people managing the airspace say, nope, nothing there.
Must be incredibly disorienting.
And then things escalate. Big time. She says, that's when it moved. No acceleration phase. No engine noise.
Okay, now we're moving from describing a weird object to describing impossible capabilities. Stuff that, as she says later, challenges physics as we know it.
What do you mean no acceleration phase?
Well, think about it. Anything we build, planes, rockets, cars, whatever, has inertia. To change speed or direction, you need to accelerate. You apply force over time.
You burn fuel, you redirect thrust, something. And that takes time. It usually makes noise, leaves a trail, something. No acceleration phase implies it changed velocity, its state of motion instantly, or near instantly.
Without speeding up gradually.
Exactly. Just boom, different speed, different direction.
And she gives specific examples of this movement, painting a picture of how abrupt and frankly terrifying it must have been. She says, 1 second it was stationary, the next it was 500 yards to my left, then below me, then, help me, it was directly in front of my canopy, maybe 15 feet away.
Whoa.
She says that was the point that changed everything I thought I knew about what's possible.
And you can absolutely see why. Moving 500 yards instantly from a dead stop, shifting position from below you to suddenly right in your face 15 feet away.
Yeah.
That defies everything we know about momentum, inertia, energy. Think about the G-forces involved in a conventional aircraft. Making moves like that, it would tear the plane apart, crush the pilot. But she doesn't report anything like that.
Yeah. It suggests a way of moving or maybe interacting with space-time itself that completely bypasses or manipulates inertia and gravity in ways we can't even comprehend, let alone replicate.
Sounds like science fiction.
It does. But these descriptions, impossible acceleration, instant stops, defying inertia, they're common threads in many of the most compelling UAP reports from credible witnesses, especially military ones. Her testimony gives a very specific, detailed example from a highly trained observer in a plane that could track these maneuvers even if ground control was blind.
Raises that huge question.
Yeah, if it's not moving through space in the way we understand it, pushing mass around, how is it moving? Is it warping space-time, hopping between dimensions, using some physical principle we haven't even discovered yet? We just don't know.
And then, right after showing off these impossible moves, it gets incredibly close. Directly in front of her canopy, she estimates maybe 15 feet away.
That close. Wow.
And that proximity let her see details.
Yeah.
Details that are just as strange as its movement. She describes the surface having a strange quality, like brushed aluminum, but alive somehow.
Alive somehow. That's
Yeah.
That's a really evocative phrase, isn't it? Adds a whole other layer of mystery beyond just weird tech.
What could that even mean?
It's subjective, of course, but coming from her, in this context, it's notable. Could it mean a subtle shimmer? A shifting texture? Some weird light absorption or emission? Maybe even an energy field she could sense? Hard to say. But combined with what she says next about pulsing patches, it hints that this isn't just a dead piece of metal, not conventional engineering as we know it.
She elaborates on the structure she saw from that close-up. No seams, no rivets, no markings. It was perfectly smooth.
Okay, that's another major engineering anomaly. Think about how we build things. Planes, ships, cars, we join pieces together.
Right, seams, welds, rivets everywhere.
Exactly. A perfectly smooth surface with no visible joints. That implies incredibly advanced manufacturing. Maybe massive scale 3D printing or extruding the whole thing at once or manipulating the material at like a molecular level. Maybe it was grown or materialized, not built, piece by piece.
Mind-boggling possibilities.
Totally. And then she adds, except for these darker patches that seem to pulse with their own light.
Pulsing lights.
Yeah. What are those? Energy sources?
Yeah.
Windows? Some kind of biological component integrated into the structure? Something else. We have no frame of reference. But these details, the seamlessness, the pulsing lights, they really push it far beyond any known aerospace tech we have. It points to something fundamentally different, maybe even, as you said, biotech or some energy system we don't understand. This is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, deeply weird.
So she's 15 feet from this impossible object.
Yeah.
And then the testimony takes another huge leap, arguably even more profound, more unsettling. She says, and then I felt it in my head. Not words exactly, but communication, like someone reaching directly into my thoughts.
Right. So now we shift from external physical observation, however bizarre, to an internal subjective experience, a claim of essentially telepathy, direct mind-to-mind contact.
Which is obviously hard to verify.
Absolutely. Subjective experiences are complex, especially after something high stress. But given the context, the sheer weirdness of the physical encounter she just described, we have to consider this part of her testimony as she presents it.
Okay.
Her description, not words exactly, but communication, suggests a transfer of meaning or maybe intent or raw information that bypasses language, just ideas or feelings appearing in her mind.
And she describes the feeling of that contact as so alien, so completely other. She said her first instinct was fear, wanting to run, but she also makes a point of saying it didn't feel hostile.
Mm-hmm.
And the message itself, despite that alien feeling, was simple, direct. We are preparing.
That feeling of completely other reinforces the idea that this presence, whatever it is, just doesn't fit into our human understanding or experience. It matches the object's physical weirdness.
Yeah.
And the message. We are preparing. It's incredibly cryptic, isn't it? Preparing for what? Arrival, observation, some big event, interaction. It gives no context.
Not at all.
But the feeling she associated with it is key, that initial fear. But the realization that the communication itself didn't feel hostile, that implies, or at least she perceived, an intent that wasn't overtly threatening, even though the experience was overwhelming and alien.
Raises huge questions about their intent, doesn't it?
Absolutely. If they are preparing, is it for something confrontational, something collaborative, something completely neutral to us? We don't know.
She says she actually tried to, think a question back at it.
Oh, interesting.
Her immediate question was, preparing for what? And she says in response, for just a moment I saw flashes, images.
Images. What kind of images?
This is where it gets really large scale.
Yeah.
She describes seeing massive ships in Earth's upper atmosphere, coordinated movements, thousands of objects like this one positioned around the globe.
Wow. Okay, so if we take that vision, as she describes it, as being linked to the "we are preparing" message, it blows the whole thing wide open.
How so?
It takes it from a single, isolated encounter over Arizona to a potentially global phenomenon. Massive ships, maybe motherships or staging platforms. Coordinated movements implies organization, purpose, strategy on a huge scale. Thousands of objects like this one positioned around the globe that paints a picture of a widespread, synchronized presence.
Like a global deployment.
Exactly. It suggests this isn't just random weirdness. It implies an organized presence with a global reach and a plan, the preparing they mention. This vision added potential scale and intent to that cryptic message. It suggests something big, organized, and potentially imminent. Is the mental link a warning? An announcement, data transfer? We don't know, but the vision changes the whole scope.
This entire intense experience, the visual, the impossible movement, the close encounter, the mental communication, the vision, she says it all lasted maybe 3 minutes.
3 minutes, that must have felt like an eternity.
I bet. And then just as suddenly as it appeared up close and did its impossible maneuvers, it was gone. She's very specific about how it disappeared. Then the object simply vanished. Not flew away, vanished, like it had never been there.
And that distinction she makes, vanish versus flew away, it's critical.
Why?
Flying away, even incredibly fast, still implies moving through space in a way we understand acceleration, velocity, trajectory. Vanishing, that implies it just ceased to exist at that spot in our reality.
Like switching off a light.
Sort of, or maybe phasing into another dimension, teleporting instantly, becoming completely invisible to everything all at once. Some kind of instantaneous displacement or dissolution. Like the impossible movement, it suggests control over fundamental aspects of reality, space, maybe even time that are just totally beyond us. It reinforces that feeling that this thing operates under a completely different set of rules.
So the encounter ends with this vanishing act after 3 minutes. She lands the plane, and then her testimony moves to the immediate aftermath, the official response, which she describes as unlike anything I'd experienced in her whole military career.
That right there suggests standard procedures for handling weird stuff, even classified stuff, were maybe thrown out the window in this case. Something different happened.
She says the debriefing involved men in suits who wouldn't identify their agency.
Ah, the classic men in suits, often associated in these stories with intelligence agencies or very deep special access programs. Unidentified personnel showing up immediately.
And they were efficient. They immediately got everything. They had our flight data, our radio transmissions, our HUD footage, everything.
That points to a rapid, high-level response, maybe outside the normal Air Force chain of command. And the fact they got all the data flight parameters, radio chatter, and especially the HUD video so quickly, it suggests there was already a protocol in place for grabbing information about events exactly like this one. A clear intent to control the evidence and the narrative right from the beginning.
And the message these unnamed guys delivered, stark and threatening. She was told the whole thing was classified or national security protocols, maybe standard for some things.
Right.
But then they told her discussing it was an act of treason. Treason. And warned her there would be consequences if she ever spoke about it.
Okay, that is extreme. Classification is one thing. Threatening a decorated officer with treason charges for talking about something she saw, that's way beyond a standard NDA or security briefing.
Yeah.
It suggests an incredibly high level of secrecy around the specific type of encounter. An intense effort by whoever these people were to make sure this information never got out. It strongly implies, as she recounts it, that there's institutional knowledge, established protocols for dealing with these things at very high levels, and a powerful motivation to keep it all compartmentalized and hidden. That's not how you handle a simple, unexplained radar blip, even a classified one.
And yet, despite those incredibly serious threats, here we have her testimony. She's speaking out. And she gives some context for why. She mentions information she's aware of beyond just her own incident.
Right. She tries to place her experience in a bigger picture.
She mentioned the Pentagon admitting to 21 cases they can't explain in a recent report, and says her encounter was one of 757 new reports they got last year. And she believes her case, because of how strange it was, is probably one of those 21 unexplained ones.
So she's connecting her personal, deeply strained experience to what she sees as an officially acknowledged, but still mostly hidden pattern. The reference to those Pentagon numbers 21 unexplained, 757 total reports in a year, according to her testimony, mind you, gives it statistical weight within her narrative. It suggests her encounter isn't unique, but part of a much larger wave of sightings being reported to the military and intelligence agencies, even if the details are kept secret. That sheer volume she cites is striking.
She also brings in some outside information, mentioning Luis Elizondo.
The former ATIP guy.
Yeah, citing him for confirming materials they have Biologics 21. And again, we need to be clear. She's citing his alleged confirmation as part of her reasoning, not stating it as a proven fact herself.
Right. She's incorporating claims made by public figures who are involved in official UAP investigations. By bringing up Elizondo's supposed confirmation of materials and biologics, she's tapping into those public claims that the government might actually possess physical evidence, maybe even non-human biological samples, related to these things.
Why mention that?
Well, within her testimony, it reinforces her belief that the government knows way more than it's letting on. It makes her own extraordinary encounter seem less like a one-off hallucination and more like something that fits into a known, albeit hidden, reality where physical craft and maybe even biological entities are involved and known to authorities. It strengthens her justification for speaking out the public needs to know if secrets this profound are being kept.
And her conclusion, based on everything her encounter, the threats, the context she cites, it's blunt, we're not alone, and whatever's happening, it's accelerating.
A stark conclusion.
And her motivation for breaking silence, risking those consequences, she ties it right back to her military oath. She took an oath to defend the country, but this experience gave her a question she couldn't answer, and that seems to be what drove her to speak. She asks, how do you defend against something that exists in dimensions we can't comprehend, that moves through space-time like we move through water?
That question really hits the core challenge, doesn't it? If these things have the capabilities she described, impossible movement, vanishing, maybe operating outside our dimensions, then our entire defense posture, based on kinetics, aerodynamics, known physics, it's potentially useless.
How do you shoot down something that isn't really there in the way you expect?
Exactly. You can't intercept something that can teleport or phase out. So her sense of duty, as she explains it, seems to have shifted. Defending the country might now mean informing the public about this potential reality, this potentially undefendable situation, because keeping silent isn't protecting anyone. That seems to be her conviction, even facing treason charges.
She explicitly says she believes the government knows more than they're telling us, and that keeping quiet about all this isn't protecting anyone anymore.
Which aligns with what many whistleblowers or former insiders in this field argue, right? That decades of secrecy haven't just stifled science and maybe held back useful technology, but they've left the public completely unprepared for a reality that might include non-human intelligence or tech operating right here.
Her speaking out, despite the threats, just highlights how strongly she feels that public awareness is now more important than secrecy, at least regarding what she experienced.
But her testimony doesn't actually stop there. It goes on. She describes something ongoing happening after the encounter and the debriefing. She says, 3 months after my encounter, I started having dreams, recurring dreams. And the core message in these dreams, the exact same thing she felt communicated to her in the cockpit. We are preparing.
Okay, recurring dreams after a major, potentially traumatic event, that's psychologically understandable. The mind works through things. But the fact that the specific content directly mirrors that alleged telepathic message, we're preparing, that's notable within her account.
Yeah. It raises that question again, doesn't it? Is this just her mind processing the incredible stress and strangeness of it all? Or, as her testimony implies, could it be some kind of lingering connection, an ongoing influence or communication manifesting in her dreams? Her account leaves it ambiguous, but presents it as a continuation of the event's impact.
And she says these dreams are getting clearer over time, the images associated with the message, and her interpretation of preparing has evolved, become more specific in these dreams. She emphasizes a distinction she now perceives. They're coming, not invading, arriving. There's a difference.
That is a fascinating distinction she's making. Invading versus arriving.
What do you make of that?
Well, invading is loaded, right? Hostility, conflict, taking over. Arriving is much more neutral. It just means reaching a place. And arrival could still be incredibly disruptive, world-changing, but it doesn't automatically imply malice.
Opens up more possibilities for intent.
Exactly. Observation, exploration, maybe just passing through, maybe something completely unrelated to us. This difference she perceives in her dreams, maybe it's her own understanding evolving, or maybe if you take her testimony at face value, it's clearer information coming through in the dreams than in that initial brief contact. It suggests a future scenario that might be way more complex than just a simple alien invasion trope.
She says the dreams are becoming more intense, more frequent, and the latest one she describes has this really chilling, very personal detail. In the latest one, I wasn't alone in the cockpit. There was someone else there, someone who looked like me, but wasn't.
Whoa. Okay, that's deeply unsettling. A doppelganger figure in her dream cockpit.
Yeah, looked like me, but wasn't.
What could that represent? Symbolically, maybe it's the profound change she feels inside herself after the encounter, the alien influence, or, again, taking the possibility of ongoing contact seriously as presented in her testimony. Could it be a more direct personal interaction manifesting in the dream state?
Like the phenomenon itself appearing as her.
Possibly. That looked like me, but wasn't. Description is pure uncanny valley. Familiar yet fundamentally wrong or alien. Could imply imitation, a psychological projection, or maybe even something interacting with her on a deeply personal level in that dream space. Very strange.
And this figure, this double, it speaks to her directly by name. She recounts the message. They smiled and said, "Soon, Sarah, very soon."
Okay, so now it's personalized. Direct address. And that message, "Soon, Sarah, very soon." It ties right back to We are preparing. And that vision of global positioning.
Makes it feel imminent.
Exactly. It suggests whatever's being prepared for is close. And addressing her personally, does that mean she has some specific role, some connection? Or is she just getting a personal heads up? The smile is ambiguous, too friendly, threatening, knowing, impossible to say, but it takes the cryptic global message and makes it intensely personal for her, creating this powerful sense of something big coming very soon, and she's somehow linked to it.
And she wraps up her testimony describing her current state of mind because of all this. A state of constant waiting, constant anticipation. She says she wakes up every morning wondering if today's the day we find out what they're preparing for.
What a burden to carry.
Unbelievable.
It really underscores the profound, lasting impact this whole sequence of events has had on her, psychologically, existentially. It wasn't just a weird 3 minutes in the air. It kicked off something ongoing, leaving her in this state of limbo, waiting for something world-altering.
Yeah.
And maybe her speaking out isn't just about informing the public. Maybe it's also about sharing that immense weight, seeking some kind of collective understanding or readiness, because carrying that anticipation alone must be incredibly isolating and difficult.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. Based strictly on Captain Chen's testimony as we've discussed it, what are the absolute key takeaways for you?
All right. Based only on her account. First, you have an exceptionally credible witness, a combat-experienced F-16 pilot. That's baseline. Second, she describes a detailed physical encounter with an object displaying capabilities, instant acceleration, vanishing, selective sensor detection that fundamentally contradict our known laws of physics and aerospace engineering.
Impossible physics.
Pretty much. Third, her testimony includes that extraordinary claim of direct, nonverbal, telepathic communication, delivering a cryptic message we are preparing, accompanied by a vision implying a coordinated, global-scale presence of these objects.
Mental contact and a global vision.
Fourth, she details an immediate, high-level official response involving unidentified personnel, seizure of all data, extreme classification, and direct threats of treason for disclosure. This strongly suggests, in her view, significant government knowledge and suppression.
The cover-up angle.
As she presents it, yes. And finally, fifth, there's an ongoing experiential element. Recurring dreams reinforcing the preparing message, evolving into a sense of impending arrival, not invasion, and culminating in a deeply personal, chilling dream encounter suggesting imminence.
So why does this one specific account, Captain Chen's testimony, matter so much to you, the listener?
Well, I think it matters because the source is someone whose entire profession depends on accurate observation and identification in the sky using advanced technology. Her detailed narrative, as she tells it, presents this layered sequence of events. The physical impossibility, the mental contact, the official suppression, the ongoing personal impact that collectively challenge our basic assumptions.
Assumptions about what?
About what's physically possible in our universe.
Okay.
About how transparent our institutions are regarding things they don't understand or can't control. And maybe even assumptions about our own place in the cosmos, if non-human intelligence is indeed operating here. Her story forces you, the listener, to really grapple with the question of what might actually be possible, especially when reported by such a credible source.
Absolutely. And her testimony, just sticking to what she said, leaves us with these massive unanswered questions, doesn't it?
Huge questions.
What are they preparing for? Who even are they? What was the real nature of that communication, that figure in her dream? What does it mean that it looks like her but wasn't?
And that distinction she felt between invading and arriving, does that hint at a future interaction that's far more complex, maybe less automatically hostile than we might assume? Does it suggest motivations we can't even guess at?
It definitely makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Captain Chen herself asks that question, born from the impossibility she saw. How do you defend against something that exists in dimensions we can't comprehend?
A terrifying question from her perspective.
But maybe, hearing her whole story, especially that arising part, maybe the first question we should ask isn't about defense at all. Maybe it's about trying to understand what arriving might actually mean from their perspective, whatever they are. What do you think they are preparing for?
It's a profound thought to wrestle with, isn't it? Her testimony pushes us right into that deep, uncomfortable, fascinating territory.
Well, that's our deep dive for today, focusing solely on the detailed testimony of Captain Sarah Chen. We've tried to unpack it piece by piece, look at the core claims, the implications as presented by her, and hopefully give you a much clearer, more detailed picture of this really extraordinary alleged encounter and the questions it raises.
And there you have it. Captain Sarah Wilker's complete testimony about her encounter on January 15, 2024. A decorated military pilot, risking her career and potentially her freedom, to share what she witnessed in the skies above Arizona. 3 key details stand out from Captain Wilker's account. First, the object's impossible movement, defying every known law of physics, appearing and disappearing without any visible means of propulsion. Second, the direct mental communication with that haunting message, "We are preparing." And third, perhaps most unsettling of all, the immediate government response, the confiscation of evidence, the classification under national security protocols, and the threats of treason charges for speaking publicly. Captain Wilkers mentioned that her encounter was one of 757 new reports the Pentagon received last year, with 21 cases they still cannot explain. These aren't isolated incidents anymore, these are patterns. What strikes me most about Captain Wilkers' testimony isn't just the encounter itself, it's her transformation afterward. The recurring dreams, the visions of massive ships positioned around our planet, and that final chilling detail, waking up to find someone who looked like her but wasn't, sitting in her cockpit, saying, "Soon, Sarah, very soon." Captain Wilkers asked a question that haunts me. How do you defend against something that exists in dimensions we can't comprehend, that moves through space-time like we move through water? It's a question that challenges not just our military capabilities, but our entire understanding of reality itself. Whatever they're preparing for, whatever is coming, Captain Wilkers believes we have the right to know, and after hearing her testimony, I'm inclined to agree. The question isn't whether we're alone anymore. The question is, are we ready for what comes next? This has been another testimony brought to you by Living Witness. I'm your host, Josh. Keep watching the skies, and remember, the truth is out there, waiting for those brave enough to seek it.